Honestly, you called me a burden, didn't you? I asked, my voice a mix of shock and a sort of fierce amusement, as if daring him to deny it. I stared across the table at Greg, the same man who had, not long ago, carelessly tossed his words at me like a discarded script. You always did think I was nothing more than extra weight, I continued, my tone soft but determined. My name is Lila, and for years I had carried the sting of every dismissive remark, every offhand comment, each one echoing the same message. I was a burden. But what I never expected was that those very words would become the cornerstone of my most unexpected triumph. It all started on an ordinary afternoon during our weekly team lunch at that little Italian bistro downtown, the one with the checkered tablecloths, the comforting aroma of simmering marinara, and enough flickering candlelight to make even the most mundane conversation seem intimate. Greg, a senior executive with an air of arrogance and a knack for delivering cutting remarks, leaned back in his chair and said, Lila, honestly, sometimes I think you just slow everyone down. You're a burden. We'd be better off without all this drama you bring. His words hung in the air like uninvited guests, and I felt my heart drop even as I forced a smile. For a moment, I was frozen, feeling every syllable like a blow. I tried to laugh it off, but inside, something shifted. I questioned everything, the way I approached my work, my endless empathy, my vulnerability that I had always thought was my strength but now suddenly felt like a flaw. I left that lunch disturbed, haunted by the echo of his words. I replayed that moment countless times over the following days, the memory growing heavier, until I finally realized, if Greg thought my sensitivity was a burden, then maybe I could turn it into my greatest asset. I decided to channel that pain into something creative, a memoir, raw and unfiltered, that told my story in my own voice. I began scribbling ideas in a battered journal that I'd carried with me since college, a journal that held the secrets of my heart and the truth of my struggles. I titled it Burden to Brilliance, a provocative name that captured the very essence of my journey from feeling weighed down by hurtful words to soaring on the wings of self-discovery. Every evening, after an exhausting day at work where I battled not only deadlines but also the daily reminders of my value, I would retreat into that journal. I wrote about my childhood, about growing up in a family that prized sensitivity as both a blessing and a curse. I detailed the countless times I'd been told to toughen up, only to find that my empathy was what made me uniquely capable of seeing the world's hidden beauty. And then there were the moments at work with Greg, moments when his condescension cut deeper than any criticism I'd encountered before. I remembered one lunch, not unlike that fateful day, where he not only dismissed me as a burden but joked about lightening the load if I ever decided to quit. Those memories, painful as they were, became fuel for my writing. I spent weeks drafting, revising, rewriting. I poured every ounce of my soul into those pages, determined to craft a story that was honest, raw, and deeply personal. I wrote about the shame of being called a burden, about the nights I lay awake questioning my worth, and about the slow, painful journey toward realizing that every scar was a testament to survival. I wrote in long, uninterrupted bursts, the kind that come when you're desperate to make sense of the chaos in your heart. And with each page, I grew stronger, more convinced that my vulnerability was not a flaw but a powerful force that allowed me to connect, to empathize, and ultimately, to transform pain into a narrative of hope. One evening, as I reread a particularly raw passage that detailed a day when my tears seemed endless, I had an epiphany. I realized that the very words Greg had once hurled at me, the ones that had stung so fiercely, could be reproposed as the raw, unvarnished truth of my memoir. I began highlighting his most cutting comments, juxtaposing them with my own reflections. He said I was a burden, and for a long time, I believed it. I wrote in a draft chapter. But every ounce of my sensitivity, every tear shed in private, was not a weakness, it was the fuel for a life that, in the end, was beautiful precisely because it was honest. I kept writing, paragraph after paragraph, transforming his cruelty into a narrative of empowerment. I even incorporated the conversations we had, some painfully bitter, others unexpectedly tender, into my memoir. I remembered the day after that lunch when, trembling with a mix of anger and despair, I had confronted him in the quiet hallway of our office. "Why do you always see me as a burden?" I had demanded, my voice trembling with vulnerability. He had looked away, unable to meet my gaze, and mumbled something about not understanding the value of efficiency. It was a moment of raw truth that I knew needed to be immortalized in ink. In my memoir, I captured that moment word for word, letting his own voice, however dismissive, become a catalyst for my personal revolution. I wrote, "In that moment, I realized that his failure to see my worth was not a reflection of my shortcomings but a mirror of his own limitations." The process of writing became a journey in itself. I spent countless nights in the quiet of my apartment, the soft hum of the city outside a constant reminder of the life that continued beyond my pain. I talked to friends about my memoir, asking for their honest feedback. Some encouraged me, saying that my vulnerability was my strength, while others warned me that I was dwelling too much on negativity. But I knew that for me, every painful detail was a stepping stone toward understanding, and a way to show others that it was possible to turn even the harshest words into a triumphant declaration of self-worth. Months later, my memoir, titled Burden to Brilliance, The Truth Behind Every Tear, was published. I remember the day it hit the shelves. I was sitting in a small, local bookstore, nervously scanning for my name among the new releases. When I finally spotted it, my hands shook as I picked it up. It was as if every moment of hurt, every whispered "you're a burden," had culminated in this tangible testament to my journey. In that instant, I realized that I had turned every cruel word into something beautiful, something that could inspire others who had ever felt diminished. The memoir quickly garnered attention. Readers wrote that it was a raw, unfiltered look into the life of someone who had dared to feel deeply, to be vulnerable in a world that often shunned sensitivity. Social media buzzed with hashtags like #BurdenToBrilliance and #TruthInTears. I received heartfelt messages from readers who said my story resonated with their own experiences, stories of rejection, of feeling like a burden, and of the eventual triumph of embracing one's true self. "Your words gave me the courage to face my own pain," one message read. "In your vulnerability, I found strength," said another. One evening, as I sat in my favorite cafe reviewing the glowing online comments, I heard a familiar voice behind me. It was Greg, the man whose dismissive words had once haunted my days. He hesitated for a moment before approaching my table. "Lila," he said softly, "I read your memoir, and I'm sorry. I never realized how much my words could hurt." His admission was brief, lacking in the full apology I had once imagined, but it was enough. In that moment, I realized that the very things he had tried to use to break me had inadvertently given me the power to rebuild, and to help others do the same. Greg's apology didn't erase the past, but it did serve as a poignant reminder of how far I'd come. I thanked him quietly and returned to my cup of coffee, feeling a strange mix of melancholy and relief. I had transformed his cruelty into art, using the very comments that once made me feel like a burden to build a legacy of hope, resilience, and unyielding truth. Now, as I look back on that tumultuous chapter of my life, I see a journey that began with deep pain and ended with unexpected triumph. My memoir has become more than just a book. It's a movement, a voice for every person who has ever been told they were too much, too sensitive, or a burden. I stand here not just as an author, but as a testament to the fact that our vulnerabilities can be our greatest strengths if we let them shape us rather than break us. I continue to write, to speak at events, and to mentor young women and men who struggle with feeling overwhelmed by criticism. Embrace every tear, I often tell them, because each one is a testament to your capacity to love, to feel, and ultimately, to overcome. The journey from hearing the dismissive words, "You're a burden," to seeing my memoir become a bestseller has been nothing short of transformative. It taught me that every harsh remark can be turned into a celebration of your inner strength, that every secret scar is a badge of honor, and that the most authentic voices are those that have known both heartbreak and healing. So, if you ever find yourself on the receiving end of hurtful comments, if someone tells you that you're too sensitive, that your feelings are a burden, remember that your truth is powerful. Write it down, speak it out, and let every word be a declaration that you are worthy, that your emotions are valid, and that your journey is uniquely, brilliantly yours. Your story, with all its twists, turns, and raw emotions, is a masterpiece waiting to be told. Embrace it, and let it transform you into the person you were always meant to be.